to understand. He was betrayed by a friend, arrested, and falsely sentenced to death. Jesus could have avoided the cross, called down fire from heaven, or summoned legions of angels to rescue him, to save him. But Jesus was not interested in saving himself. He was all about saving you. Every detail of this torturous path to the cross was part of God's plan to bring you to Him. We're all broken. We've all messed up and have all made wrong choices. And no one had to teach us as a baby about anger and selfishness. We just came out that way, sort of a sin covering. But on the cross, with His blood He shed, the Bible says Jesus blotted out our record of sin, nailing it to His cross. The blood of Jesus washes away our sin covering. And His blood is our ticket to enter through a new door, a forever relationship door with God. So what do we do with this great news? The Bible says if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. You see, it's not enough to believe in Jesus with just your head. You must believe with your heart. Now, there's just one person alone at the foot of the cross. It is you. What will you say to Jesus? Say, "Thank you, Jesus, for shedding your blood for me. I'm giving you my heart today, Jesus. I do believe you died for me and that you were raised from the dead for me. Please give me a new heart and a new life right now."
Alright, in this video, I want to talk about the dawning of a new day. And what this is in reference to is when the biblical day actually starts. Now, there has been a misconception that I've been following for a long time myself, and never really put too much thought into it, and actually, I would say, was blinded to this until recently. And that's the start of the day. When we read in Genesis chapter 1, it's commonly accepted that the day started in the evening and then it ends at the next evening. But let's read what it says here when it mentions the first actual day. At verse 3 it says, "And God said, Let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day." Now what we tend to do is take this sentence here, "and the evening and the morning were the first day," and say, oh, okay, that's the day. Evening started it, and then the morning didn't end it. It starts again in the evening. All right? But there's so many errors with this, and you're going to see this as I go through the scriptures as well, where if the day starts in the evening, then how come it says in the morning was the first day? So what's going on here? Is the morning before the noontime the actual ending of the day? What about the time between morning and evening? Like, that seems to be completely dismissed from this picture here, because we have evening and morning. That's talking about the night, right? It says the evening and the morning, the first day. That's talking about from sunset to sunrise. That's the nighttime. You're missing the whole daylight period. But from the context, as we see here, God said, "Let there be light." And He divided the light from the darkness. It mentions the light before the darkness. And then again it says the light He called day, mentions in it first, and then darkness He called night, mentions it second. So He creates light, right? So he creates the day. Then it's evening and morning with the first day. So what God is saying is the light came, we have day. Then there was evening, and the morning is the start of the next day. The day actually starts at sunrise, not at sunset. And what actually got me thinking about this was somebody saying, passing in a video I was listening to, that what it actually says in the Hebrew is that then there was evening, then there was morning. That's the actual context in the Hebrew, is that it's saying then evening came and then the morning, and then at morning, this is the second day, this is the start of it, and this is what God does on the second day. And then he stops working, and then it was evening and morning, and then that was the second day, right? So he seems to have stopped working at night, and then when morning comes, we have the third day. And then there was evening, he stops working, then there's morning, and he goes into the fourth day. So that seems to be what is said here. And when we actually look at the rest of the scriptures that I'm going to bring up, we're going to see that this is actually consistent. Let's go to John chapter 20 at verse 19. It says, "Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week." Now I don't have to read the rest of this verse. This is just what we got to focus on here. It says, "Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week." So it doesn't say, oh, the next day when it started at evening, or at evening when the next day started. It says the same day at evening. But if the next day starts at evening, then it's not the same day now, is it? Let's go over here to Mark chapter 4, verse 35. It says, "And the same day when the evening was come," but that's the, if evening was come, that's the next day. And again, I don't need to the rest of that verse, just focusing on what it's talking about the day. So again, it's saying the same day when evening was come, but evening is not the same day, right? If we're taking this to mean the evening is the start of the next day, then how is it saying the same day at evening? The same day at evening. Come over here to Mark chapter 14. "And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, that this day, even this night, before the cock crow twice, thou shalt not deny me thrice." So Jesus saying, this day, even this night. So why wouldn't he say tomorrow, before dawn, you're going to deny me 3 times? He says this day, even this night. Right? Or to go to Matthew. And at verse 1 it says, "In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre." So it says at the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn for the first day of the week. So if we are to take this that the evening starts the day, and that's the dawning of the new day is at evening, then what this is saying is that the Sabbath ended. So from a lot of people's point of view, the Sabbath is the 7th day of the week. They say it's Saturday, and that starts sunset Friday evening and it ends sunset Saturday evening. So if it's the end of the Sabbath, then this is Saturday night, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, being what we would call Sunday, right? So this thing's all jacked up now. It's saying Mary and the other Mary came to the sepulchre at the end of the Sabbath, at Saturday night, and not Sunday morning. But this is Sunday morning. The Sabbath ended as the sun rose to start the first day of the week. Right? They didn't come at night to come to the sepulchre. They came in the morning. Come over here. Mark 15. And now when the evening was come, because it was the preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath. And what this is actually talking about is when they wanted to get Jesus' body after he gave up the ghost on the cross. They pierced him in the side with a spear. They wanted to take his body down, and they wanted to put him in the sepulchre and take care of him. Right? It says that evening was come. So this would be the start of the next day. Right? Because not only that, it says evening was come. Then they went to Pilate, so that evening already came. Then they went to Pilate. Then they had to probably take time to get an audience with him. Then they had to actually talk to him. Then Pilate had to send centurions down to check out if Jesus was actually dead, which takes some time. Then they have to come back with the report. Then they have to be given the okay to go get his body. Then they have to head back to Jesus and get the body. Then they have to prepare him, and they have to put him into the sepulchre. And they did this at the night before the dawning of the Sabbath day. So you see how this completely changes everything, because if this is with the evening, right? Because the next day is the Sabbath, this is the start of the day. So if the day starts at evening, this would have to be Thursday night, and the following day would start Friday night for the Sabbath. So they wouldn't have a big rush to do all this. They could be taking their time because they would have the following daylight period, Friday, the daylight period, before the actual Sabbath. So you see how that doesn't make sense. This evening was still part of this day. Right? So this changes the way we see things here. Now, it's interesting that Jesus had a Passover Seder meal the day before, right? Or the night before. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people would say that that's the same day as the actual Passover, because the day started at evening. But looking at all this, that doesn't add up. And take a look at what it says here. In Exodus chapter 12 at verse 6 it says, "And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening." So we see here the 14th day, Israel shall kill the Passover lamb in the evening, which would be starting the 15th day. But it's not, because it's a misunderstanding. "And they shall take the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door posts of the houses, wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire, unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs shall they eat it. Eat it not raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the pertinence thereof. Here we get to see them rushing to take care of his body before the dawning of the next day. Leave nothing of it behind. Everything that's left shall be burnt up. Basically, a picture of Jesus going into the heart of the earth here. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until morning, because that's the start of the next day. And that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. This is exactly what we see with Jesus being crucified, giving up the ghost right at evening, so they were rushing to get his body so that they can take care of it before the next day, before the morning of the next day, which would be the actual Sabbath, the seventh day of the week, starting at sunrise, not at sunset the day before. Now, this changes everything because we look at these feast days, like those of us who are looking for the rapture, we're looking at the feast days and we're looking at an example here of Rosh Hashanah and the Feast of Trumpets. We're looking for the new moon, and that we see it on the 27th, but that's supposed to count for the 28th of September there, and we start the day at the evening instead of the morning, and that completely changes everything, right? Uh, it doesn't change that feast actually all too much because when you see the new moon, let's say on the 27th, that's when Israel saw the new moon. The 28th is actually the first day of the next month because it says when you see the new moon, then the following day is the first day. So when you see the new moon in the evening, when morning starts, that's the first day of the next month because it's a completely new day. It didn't start like, let's say you saw the new moon at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's not the start of the first day of the month right there at 1 o'clock in the morning. And you've already missed most of the night, right? No, it actually starts the following day at sunrise. So this changes the way we ought to look at things, and just kind of putting this into perspective here. This is something I'm going to need to look into more and break down a little more, but what I actually wanted to do, let's see if let me just go, this is probably the best I can do, really. Let's just use the top two squares, top two sets of squares anyway, sets of 7 here. We don't need the bottom ones here. But like I said, this is something I would have to study a bit more and put together because putting together the actual day that Jesus was crucified and rose from the dead, this actually changes the way we look at this and read this. So it's a little bit different. Now, what we would have to do is not have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday here. We would actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because the days don't matter. Matter of fact, it's actually interesting to say that Monday, mon, like mono, is 1. Saturn, for Saturday, is associated with the cube with 6 sides and the 6-pointed star, and associated with the 6, which actually shows Sunday as the 7th day of the week, something that a lot of Sabbatarians would flip, just me mentioning, but we'll just ignore the days of the week here. Just say that this is day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, because that's what the Bible does. It doesn't give you days of the week by name, but by number, right? So these would actually be like a letter, kind of like Roman numerals. I don't know if it would be like Aleph, Bet, Dalet, Nun, whatever. I don't know if that's how they do it. Just the letters represent each day of the week. I'm assuming that's how they would do it, which might tell us something interesting. Maybe it's a picture, again, of the creation week of the 7,000 years of mankind. Who knows? I'll probably do that and look at that and might help understand what's going on here, because traditionally it's Good Friday when Jesus was crucified. All right? So let's say this is the day portion of Friday and this is the night portion. Because what we're going to actually do is that the day actually starts at sunrise. So this is the day portion, this is the night portion of day 7. This is day 6, this is day 7. So Jesus is crucified, right, coming at the end of the day, or he gives up the ghost, I'm going to say, coming at the end of the day. They work hard at the evening. Evening comes, they're getting the body, they're hurrying up as time is going by, finally getting his body into the tomb and taken care of before the morning of the next day. And like it says, they rested the next day because that was the Sabbath. So here's the day, and then obviously night, and then we would come to here, the dawning of the first day of the week as the Sabbath ended, like we read in Matthew 28. This is when they came to the sepulchre. The Sabbath was over, and Jesus had already been risen. He seemed to have risen either right before dawn, right at dawn, sometime in the night of the Sabbath here. So what we have is an issue here, right? Jesus gave up the ghost. So when he died physically in the flesh, like we read in Peter, I don't remember if it's 1st, 2nd Peter, and he was quickened, he was made alive in the spirit, and he went into the heart of the earth and he preached unto the spirits imprisoned, that he was in the heart of the earth when he gave up the ghost. So he would have been in here for Friday, and then, or the 6th day, and the 6th day's night. So there's 1 day, 1 night, and then you have here 1 day, 1 night. So you got only 2 days and 2 nights. So when Jesus said that he was in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights, this doesn't match up, right? If we move it over and he was actually crucified on the 5th day, what we would call Thursday here, things are a little bit different, right? So he gives up the ghost partially through the daytime of the 5th day here. And again, evening comes, they're trying to get his body, they get his body, prepare his body before this next day, but this is not the Sabbath day, this is the 6th day of the week. But if this is the Passover, the next day is the first day of unleavened bread, which would make this a Sabbath. So they would rest this day and the rest this day. And what's interesting is that in the Greek, when it says at the end of the Sabbath, it actually says at the end of the Sabbaths. This is actually plural. So this could actually be it, where this is a Sabbath and this is a Sabbath, right? So we would have the 5th day here. Jesus gave up the ghost, so he's already going into the heart of the earth. Then we have the night. We have a day, a night, day, and night. So we have 3 days and 3 nights, and then Jesus rose up, right? That seems to fit. Now, what is interesting, though, is taking a look at this week in general. A lot of people put it that Jesus came 4,000 years after the fall of Adam and Eve, that there's 2,000 years left after he gave up the ghost, and then you have the 1,000-year millennial reign. So each one of these days, day 1 is 1,000 years, day 2, 1,000 years, 3, and so on. Each day is 1,000 years, right? So they have Jesus crucified in the midst of the week. Now, in the midst of the week does not necessarily mean right smack in the middle. It very well can be. But in the midst of the week can include the 3rd day to the 5th day. That's in the midst of the week. You can even go so far as to say in the 2nd day to the 6th day is still the midst of the week. Me, I would narrow it down to the 3rd to the 5th, but that's just my personal opinion, and that doesn't have much weight to it at all. But when you say the midst, it just means in the middle of, in between the week. So it's not at the end of the week, it's in the middle of it. And this is in the middle of the week, this is in the midst of it. This is the direct middle, obviously, right? But ultimately, even if it's over here on the 5th day, this is still in the midst of the week. But anyway, it's just kind of interesting. It's interesting that what we see here, I'm not quite sure why they have it where he has to be crucified right at 4,000 years, and then we're in the last days. Not too sure. It might explain why the Jews have it the year something like 5,700 and something, and we have it 2,000 years since Christ. So we're getting closer to the 6,000 years. For some reason, we have it at 4,000 years when Jesus was crucified. I would have to probably look more into that to clarify that. But yeah, that timing might actually be off. I don't know, because a lot of people have Jesus crucified at Wednesday, and gives up the ghost here. It's at evening. They fight to get his body. They get his body, and they get taken care of before the first day of unleavened bread. This would be a Sabbath. And so we have, you might even say that since they got him in the tomb, that this is when we actually start to count. So we have 1 day, 1 night, 2 days, 2 nights, 3 days, 3 nights, and then Jesus rose here. So even if you do it that way, and you just say as soon as he's in the tomb, he's in the heart of the earth, okay, that seems to fit as well, because then it still makes sense that at the end of the Sabbaths, because you have the first day of unleavened bread is a Sabbath, and then you have the 7th day of the week is a Sabbath. And it also makes sense when you use a lunar calendar as well, because the Passover would always be on the 14th day, right? And on the 14th day, that would be at about a full moon, and it wouldn't be be possible for it to land on a Sabbath, right? Because if this day landed on a 7th day Sabbath, it would be an issue, because everybody had to sacrifice their own lamb, which would be doing work, right? So a bit of an issue, because on the lunar calendar, you would have the 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th would all be 7th day Sabbaths, because it'd be the 7th day of the brain's a little farting there, of the month there. So I think actually I got that a bit off. The first, because the new moon would be the first day, and it would be a Sabbath. Then you would have your 6 days, and then you have, boom, here the actual 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th. So I think I messed up there. 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th. So then if this is the 1st, this is the 8th, this is the 15th, this would be 14th, and that's why you'd get this Good Friday thing, which again, it doesn't seem to fit, but I could just be completely way off. Again, this is something I want to look more into. Just looking at this to see that the actual day starts at the dawn, it shows that it shows us that clearly in the scriptures. But not only that, it's very intuitive. Like, it just makes sense that the day actually starts when the sun comes up. I mean, it seems to make complete sense just naturally. Like, yeah, of course, that's when the day starts. I mean, the day starts when the sun leaves and the night's here. It's a bit weird, but at the same time, it's like, okay, whatever God says. But I think we've misunderstood what is being said here. So anyway, with that being said, thanks for watching and take care.